On this episode of Exactly How, we're going to show you how to creatively structure deals to make money in ways that most people never think of. We'll show you what to do and say when someone won't sell their house for your low price. And we're also going to show you how to make a lot of money up front on deals and have money coming in for years to come on this episode of Exactly How.
You're listening to the Exactly How podcast, where you'll hear the underground, closely guarded wealth building secrets of successful people around the globe. Discover exactly how to improve your mental, physical, and financial health. Feel better, make more money, live, give, and prosper in today's exciting, fast-paced world filled with opportunity for those who know exactly how.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Connected Investors podcast, Exactly How. During this episode, you're going to discover exactly how to use creative financing in your real estate investing business. And if you're a wholesaler, you're going to love this episode. I know creative financing and wholesaling, they don't really make sense together yet, but after this episode, you're going to be really excited. For those of you who are new, my name is Ross Hamilton, today's host of ConnectedInvestors.com and PrivateLenders.com. Today, we have the privilege to learn from a guy who has closed on over 40,000 transactions. That's like a city. It's insane. So we bring the best of the best to you. Prior to his career in real estate investing, he was a bit of a cowboy. And if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see he even has some horse pictures behind him there. So it's near and dear to his heart still today. But all that changed by a little accident with his father-in-law. Maybe we'll talk about that later on in the podcast here. I would describe our guest as really the king of notes. If you don't know what a note is, we'll define that for you before we really dive in. His name is Eddie Speed, and today he's going to explain exactly how to use creative financing in your business. Eddie, thanks so much for taking the time to speak with us.
How are you, my friend?
I'm a 10. How are you?
Oh, I'm a 10.
There we go. Before we jump in on exactly how to use creative financing, Eddie, you contribute a lot of your success to never giving up. Why do you think that's played such a big role in your success?
I just think it's part of being an entrepreneur. The markets change and things happen, and there's not every day is going to be a sunny day, and you just got to be determined to be tenacious and believe in what you can do, but have a clear vision of how you can do it.
Yeah. And for those of you who follow Think and Grow Rich, the persistence chapter that he has in that book, he said something, Eddie, and I'll never forget it as I can't remember it. No, he said, if you're nothing but persistent, you'll be successful. Now, once you have to know what you want to do first, right? Persistence is not chapter 1, but if you're nothing but persistent, eventually you'll be successful. So I can really, I really appreciate that response there. Now, what makes the Exactly How Financial Freedom podcast very unique is every show comes with a detailed action plan. We pull all of the steps, all of the information out of our guest's head and create a blueprint on exactly how you can implement what we're going to cover. So if you're driving around, don't worry. You don't necessarily have to take notes. We have you all covered at exactlyhow.com. You're going to get the notes. Eddie has even agreed to give you a very valuable free gift that you'll be able to find on exactlyhow.com. In addition, you can throw your name into a drawing to where you can win access to our pre-MLS software. This allows anyone to find properties for pennies on the dollar before the masses. We sell this flagship software for $3,000, but someone today is going to get it for free. If you're watching this live in just a few moments, we're going to pull their name out of the hat. So go ahead and visit exactlyhow.com and make sure that you're in the running. So Eddie, before we jump into creative financing, we mentioned the word notes, and your name is kind of tied to that phrase. Can you just explain what a note is?
Well, a note is a promise to pay. So if you wrote a check, Ross, and you said, pay to the order of, and that's how a check starts out, right? And you put the date and you put an amount, make it a big one, right? If you put an amount of money in there and you sign that, you signed a note. You signed a promise to pay. Now, when we think about real estate notes, we think about a note that is payable over time with interest, right? So then it would have the amount that's owed, the principal amount, an interest rate, a monthly payment, and then that loan would like amortize out over time, right? And then it's secured by a piece of property. So you would have a mortgage or a deed of trust, depending on what state you're in, would be filed along with having a note. You'll file a mortgage or deed of trust of record, and that's what puts the property up as collateral.
Gotcha. That's what a note is. Your mortgage. It is. There's big business in notes, and Eddie knows that firsthand. But what Eddie has found that has been the most impactful in a lot of individuals' lives is this creative financing. So that's what we're going to talk about there. Eddie, can you define creative financing now for everyone?
Well, creative financing in this strategy is finding a piece of property and looking at either existing financing that's on it, or taking the seller who may own it free and clear, or have a little equity, sometimes a lot of equity, sometimes a little equity, and figuring out how we can structure financing, particularly if the seller was willing to carry financing, and we can structure financing that's super favorable to the buyer. In other words, think in terms of we can buy a property at full retail because we can make the financing so advantageous. Think in terms of it's like wholesale financing.
Awesome. And Eddie, this is a very important episode for everyone who's listening here, and near and dear to my heart, because some of the biggest deals I ever did were deals that other people walked away from because the HGTV numbers just didn't line up. And then I was able to do some creative financing. Maybe Eddie will talk about some of these deals, but Eddie, one of the best deals I did is someone owned a house free and clear, and they basically gave me a mortgage on the property at 0% principal only payments.
Yeah.
So every month I paid above free retail, but every month when I made that $1,000 payment, $1,000 came off what I owed. And unfortunately, that's not how notes work. Correct, Eddie?
Well, I mean, you can do it, and we talk about zero interest, but zero interest we find is really offered about 20% of the time, even if you know to ask for it. So you have to be a little more creative than just zero interest, although of course that's awesome.
Yeah, the principal only pay. If they were stuck on a price, so I made them an offer on terms, and Eddie's going to kind of walk you through this, but I have been there before, and that was one of my most profitable deals. I rented it out for years and years. They paid down the mortgage almost all the way. Then I sold it, and I made a good amount of money on that. So it is a fantastic strategy. So before we jumped on the line here, Eddie, we talked about the individual who's going to benefit from this is someone who's out there actively making offers on properties in this hyper-competitive market, and the price you're offering the individual is too low. They're like, I'm not taking that, click, right? Or they can't accept your offer because maybe they owe too much on the property, or there's just like a weird factor to the property. And I want to kind of break down each of those and some of the strategies around how to overcome some of the most common objections that you're going to find in your business as you're out there making offers. So let's talk about, you're talking to someone who has a property, and you do your math, and the offer you make them is too low. What next?
Yeah, they say, I won't take the price. And that is what I find that most wholesalers are. That's why they're making so many offers in order to get one deal accepted, right? We're in a hot real estate market, and people don't feel compelled to discount their property. Maybe they should feel compelled because it needs fixing or this or that or whatever, but they won't sell it because they're not getting the price they want. So how this really started is, as you know, I'm in a number of really high-level real estate masterminds, guys that are all 100-plus house a year guys. And I was sitting around with a group of those guys literally about 2 years ago, and they were talking about a deal, and I said, well, just structure it like this. And we're just all kind of sitting around like you and I've sat around in some groups before. And I just kind of penciled it out. And I said, you could make an offer and it could look like this, and you could offer it full retail, but we're going to make the first payment due, a year from closing because you got to go fix it up, and then you got to borrow private money and, blah, blah, blah. And then you could structure the financing like this. And if they insisted on an interest rate, maybe you could get 1% interest that goes to 4% interest after 8 years and blah. And then I showed them how to resell it, with seller financing. They bought it with seller financing, and then they wrapped it with seller financing. And it was a deal that at the end of the day, Ross, they made, $35,000 today, and they make a cash flow of $500 a month for 30 years. And they're like, you can't be serious. And I'm like, of course I'm serious. And they're like, why don't you teach every real estate investor how to do this? And I said, I don't know. I guess I could.
Yeah.
And they said, but you're a note guy. Like you said, when you and I first started talking, you're the note guy. That's how I learned this, is because I probably looked at 300,000 or 400,000 seller finance notes. If anybody that's ever had a vantage point in the whole world to see how they structure crazy deals, that'd be me, right? Because they've all showed up at my doorstep trying to sell me these notes. And so then I realized that with a tightening wholesale market, that the real estate investor that really focused on wholesaling was not really thinking in terms of financially crafting the deal to make another way to make profit other than just buy low, sell high. And that's how it started.
Yeah. And it's the make or break. This stuff that Eddie's going to break down for you as we go over these steps is a game changer in just how you're going to look at real estate, because a lot of these properties already have financing. You don't have to go out and necessarily borrow a lot of money. So if that's been a big roadblock for you, even though you can go right to privatelenders.com and have these individuals compete, if that's not working for you, then the creative finance deals is a huge opportunity for you. We had a podcast a few episodes ago about subject to deals, which might kind of tie into this as we kind of break this down. And my backstory is I basically took $100,000 from an equity line and built that up into my whole empire through creative financing and subject twos. So pay attention as we go through this. Now, Eddie, you mentioned a free gift you were going to give everyone. Can you kind of explain what that is?
Well, I have just finished a book, Ross. Literally just finished, as in you are the very first guy to do a podcast that I've offered this book to.
You heard it here. That's here first.
True. No kidding. So this book, so I was sitting up late one night. I'll tell you how I kind of come up with the idea for this book. So I was really thinking about it because I'm training a lot of really, smaller wholesalers, medium-sized wholesalers, and some giant wholesalers, many wholesalers that bought more than 200 houses last year. So I'm training all of these different guys. And it's funny when they show up and they come to a class and hang out with us, they're like, golly, you're just looking at real estate through a different lens. So the backstory is late one night, I was kind of thinking about how to describe this to somebody like your audience, right? And what is it that I'm doing? Why is it that I'm doing something that the other real estate investors don't do? And it's because I've been in the seller finance note space for 40 years, because I've been studying creative finance just longer than anybody, right? In more detail. And I was channel flipping, and I got to this movie. And 25 minutes into this movie, snap, I realized what I was doing. The name of the movie was Moneyball. And I realized that I was doing Moneyball for real estate investors. So I've just written a new book, and it's titled A Whole New Ball Game with Creative Financing.
There you go. I love it. So we'll make sure to have access to.
After they read the book, Ross, we're going to give them we're going to take them through a class. We're going to take them through a little online class, because then we're going to show them case studies. Conceptually, that's what we're going to talk about today, and then we'll get to the whiteboard and real numbers, and so you can see the money.
Exactly. And you'll be able to find that at exactlyhow.com. You can find this episode, and everything that we talk about here will all be laid out for you. So thanks for sharing that epiphany with you. And, good things can come from watching TV, right?
Every once in a while.
Yeah. Yeah. So we talked about when the offer is too low.
Yeah.
Right. So when you're talking to these individuals, you have to shift their whole thought process from I'm going to sell this property right now for this price to it'd be better for me to take this option. So that's probably where a lot of the your class kind of comes in, because there's probably a lot of lefts and rights in that step, getting the homeowner educated on what you're doing and how it benefits them.
Well, the best way to teach clearly is by case studies. And so in these classes, we use case studies and just say, here's what a real estate investor did. Here's how he was stuck. Here's how we fixed it. And here's how we structured it. Without making it too complex, without showing you 25 different ways to do it, which I could, right? We'll show a few basic concepts and say, here's a framework, and you can tweak this part or this part depending on the story. So we'll give you framework of different ways to, as we would say, kind of hide the discount. One story I tell about in the book, super fast.
That's actually a good title too, Hide the Discount. That's that's catchy. One story is about a young man that was a coaching student of mine, and he was in Seattle, super hot market, right? And he was he said his numbers could only pay $265. He was stuck. He was done. That's all he could pay. This was a duplex, okay? And they wanted $325. And they were willing to sell or finance, but if they sell or financed, he plugged in his numbers, he could only pay, they insisted on having 5% interest. And his debt service at that bigger amount, it wasn't going to work. So he was stuck, and he said, I'm at 265, they're at 325, we're 60,000 apart, and we are done. I said, no, you're not. He said, what do you mean? I said, write an air note. He said, air note? Now, I have a Southern accent, right? That's A-I-R. And I said, do a zero interest, zero payment due in 15 years. There's your 320. There's 320. Just going to take you 15 years. It's just going to take you 15 years to get it.
But they were thrilled because they were stuck on what the closing statement said. And that's what I find when people won't accept a low offer, they have a number screwed into their head. And so you can match that number if you're able to craft the financing in a way that you're paying it with what, let's just call it really soft dollars.
Yeah. You choose the price. I choose the terms. You choose the terms. I choose the price.
Yeah.
Right. It's like that whole back and forth there. Well, great.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So anything else you want to touch on as far as that specific step goes before we move to the next step?
Yeah, there's a lot of ways to do it. It's just fun. This is one of the most entertaining things I've ever taught in my life.
Yeah. You get to, creatively solve problems in ways that people couldn't even imagine before you opening their eyes to these different opportunities out there.
Yeah.
So, well, great. Actually, before we get into the second step, I have to announce the winner of the free $3,000 software that actually will allow you to search your entire market for all of the high equity deals out there that are listed or unlisted. So this could really buddy very well with the stuff that you're learning here. And the winner of the software, they went to exactlyhow.com, threw their name in the hat, is Chris Labstug. Chris, congratulations. Our team will be reaching out to you, getting you all set up and showing you how to use the software. That's what we do all day, every day here at connectedinvestors.com. Okay, so now you're out there, you're making offers, and you made an offer to someone who can't accept the offer for whatever reason. Can you explain why someone might not be able to accept the offer?
Well, this is what happens so many times with wholesalers when they don't even ride out and look at a deal. I mean, you somebody calls you and they have a house that's ARV is $200,000, right? That's what it's worth, and then they give you the bad news and they say, "But we owe 170, right? Or we owe 180," and you're like, "Well, I'm really sorry. I appreciate it, but I can't pay 90 cents on the dollar for your house, so there's really no point in me looking." So what would it be like, Ross, if you could go out and figure out a way to make upfront money and long-term money out of a deal that your competition wouldn't even ride out and look at?
It sounds like there's not going to be any traffic getting to the house.
The joke in a lot of markets is these real estate investors meet each other walking down the sidewalk, right?
Yeah.
So So basically, yes, we are going to use a unique approach to sub two and then seller wrap financing. Now, we're not saying that we invented that idea, but we have perfected that idea in several ways that other people definitely have not taken it to that level. And the reason we've done that is we want to insulate the chances of the underlying mortgage getting called. So the way we paper it, the way we structure it, the way how we take title to it, how we handle the insurance. There's some specific things that we have done that the odds of triggering a due on sale clause, the risk of that is very good. And then the other side is we've done a very good job, I think, of identifying who would rebuy that property, a penalty box buyer, right? What is a self-employed or somebody that's high commission, high bonused, somebody that's got a green card here legally, but they're not an American citizen. All of the things that conventional lending is not really filling the gap of, and utilizing the underlying financing, particularly if it's written at a 3 or 4% interest rate, to go then wrap that so that you can essentially make money on the mortgage company's money. Because if you could wrap a 4% note with a 7% note, you make 3% on the mortgage company's money. Plus, you can make the down payment, which is the difference between what they owe and what the property's worth.
Yeah. We actually, the house that I lived in, guys, this is a real world strategy here that is very important to understand. And Eddie said a few things there that we're not going to have time to get into at this episode. But remember, we did a whole podcast on subject to investing. He talked about the mortgage company calling it due. We talked about the due on sale clause there. I've done so many subject tos, and the chance of getting it called due is few and far between, but I have had one called due once before, Eddie, and It wasn't because of anything. It was because someone was scamming the bank, and there's a small local bank, and they went back and they did title on all the notes, and anything that didn't look perfect, they just kind of called due. But I was actually able to work through that without any problems whatsoever. So yeah, there's all sorts of different trusts to set up, how you name things. It's a very, very good strategy. And in today's market, it's something you definitely need to know. So
the reason that this expertise helps, a real estate investor is I have shown thousands of real estate investors how to create seller financing correctly and safely. And when you resell it, you're seller financing. So you're selling it to somebody that with the intent that they're going to pay you back successfully over 20 or 30 years. And so we're just using the acquisition strategy with the financing in place, but the real art of the deal is reselling it in a way that you sell it to the right guy and you'll make sure he pays you back.
Exactly. And 10 years can go by and you might get the property back, and fantastic.
Well, yeah, but hopefully the odds of having a problem loan is all about, have you ever heard the saying, the time to worry about a loan is before you make it?
That makes a lot of sense.
So we're trying to show people the real skill and how to be a private lender to offer seller financing in a way that you're not creating a problem down the road. The odds are way in your favor. You create a successful loan. Great. So that creates upfront transactional income and long-term cash flow.
And really that long-term cash flow, it's once your cash problem is solved, right? You got millions of dollars in the bank, you bought whatever cool stuff you wanted to buy, you took care of your family. You want that steady income coming in. You want your efforts that you're putting in now to just keep paying dividends for as long as possible. So it's, a lot of people, they want to flip this house and make their first check, make that first check, right? But the second you do, just know that it's about long-term wealth and creating that residual income, which is what drives a lot of individuals that aren't so crunched for money today. So great. We talked about, step one, step two, number three, the weird factor. Let's just jump right into it. So what does the weird factor mean to you?
It could be anything that the wholesale the wholesaler, his buyer isn't immediately seeing as a great property for them to buy. So think in terms of the highest percent of people that are buying from wholesalers are, as you and I refer to as the HGTV buyer, right? And they have a certain property in their mind, but some properties are better to be owned by an owner occupant than they are to be rented, or it's a house in acreage, or it's two houses, or just the list goes on of any property that doesn't fit inside the box that the HGTV buyer has in their mind, and they think it's a little too weird to buy. In fact, I would say, Ross, probably a third of the houses that real estate investors go look at, it just kind of has a little bit of a weird factor, and you could make it work, but it's not going to be a great wholesale deal because your HGTV buyer doesn't see the value in it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, just a quick random question, fun little lesson at the same time. One of my toughest deals I did was I bought a log cabin and I thought I stole the thing. But then comping it out, I couldn't get the comps because they can only comp out other log cabins. And this was a random, it was in a mountain area. It made sense, but is that kind of what you're talking about? Maybe a log cabin is weird, a property type, you mentioned a lot of different acres. What are some other scenarios of weird deals that you've seen?
I had a very advanced real estate investor that lives in Phoenix that just was on a call with me yesterday, and he had 2 fourplexes. And they need repairs, right? And to go flip them, he can't go flip it because he's having to go pay retail. But we backed into how to structure the financing around it, including the repairs. And then all of a sudden it was like, he said, but if I would have just tried to wholesale it, I literally would have had no bites. And so that's an example of, it was just weird enough that the typical, the HGTV buyer is not $1 million buyer typically, right? They're not going to step out and fund $1 million on one deal.
Yeah.
So that's an example of, there wasn't anything wrong with the property other than it needed some repairs, which that's not that abnormal. And we structure financing ways around that. But the truth of the matter is, it was just $1 million.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, great, Eddie. Anything else you want to kind of bring to the conversation here, or should we just people should just go to exactlyhow.com and jump on your training?
My mission is to show a real estate investor how to dig through their garbage can and pull out leads that otherwise they're not doing anything with except burning paper and burning a lot of money, making their phone ring and a lot of energy trying to go look at properties that their offers aren't successful. If we can transition that, I think literally you could double your conversions by looking at your trash can and the unclosed deals and wrapping creative financing around it. And all of a sudden you're making transactional income up front because you're typically reselling it with seller financing, but you're creating long-term cash flow because you're structuring these deals in a way that they're producing $300, $400, $800 a month, literally for a long time.
Yeah, that's great. Eddie, let me ask you a question. What do you think your life would be like if you never found real estate?
That is a funny question. So I grew up as a cowboy, and I have an associate's degree in ranch management, and just life took turns. And so I probably would end up in some form of, the cattle business or, agriculture or something like that. But I sure do enjoy playing cowboy and not depending on the weather to make a living as a cowboy.
Well, you had mentioned in your bio there being a little dispute with your father-in-law that got you into real estate.
No, actually, it was that I started dating Martha, my wife, and she was trying to buy. They were trying to buy a horse, and so they came out and looked at it, and one thing led to another, and he invited me back to the house, and he was sort of one of the original pioneers in the whole country in 1980. It's a long time ago, right? In buying seller finance notes, and so that's when I got started. So I really just kind of started, from very humble beginnings of essentially just doing an apprenticeship. So,
gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. Well, it sounds like your wife was really helped helps you find yourself in a lot of different ways.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's fantastic. All right, Eddie, we're going to jump into the rapid fire section of this. I'm going to ask you a few questions and just the first thing that comes to your mind. You ready?
Okay.
All right. On a scale of 1 to 10, how strict were your parents?
4.
Get up early or stay up late?
Stay up late.
How many hours of sleep do you get?
7.
Favorite or most recent book that you read?
Never Split the Difference. Chris Voss.
We'll make sure to have that at Exactly How. That's a good one. If you could be any superhero, who would it be?
I don't know, Superman.
There you go. Something that everyone should do less of.
Stress.
Something everyone should do more of.
Smile.
Will people visit Mars in your lifetime?
No.
Bitcoin, bang or bust?
Bust.
What year do you think the next recession will be?
2020.
Oh, gosh. All right. When there's blood in the street, there's plenty of money to be made if you have your eyes opened to the opportunities that are around you. Eddie, thank you so very much for sharing all your insights with us.
All right. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, and for everyone else who is still listening to the show, congratulations. You made it to the end of the show. You finished what you start. Only 30% of people actually make it to the end of any podcast. So you obviously enjoyed the information that we shared with you today. All we ask is that you like, share, tag someone, do something to interact with us in some way. We spend a lot of time, energy, and effort to bring you this fantastic information, and we really thrive off your interaction. So at least give us a little comment, a thumbs up, something like that, so we know that you're there, and we'll keep the information coming to you. So until the next podcast, I'll see you on the inside of connectedinvestors.com. Bye-bye.
The Connected Investors app connects you with investors, notifies you of available properties, helps locate cash buyers, and secure private funding to close deals. Set up in seconds to become a member of the Connected Investors social network. Now you can scroll through your main feed to find cash buyers, see investment properties not available to the general public, and network with investors by adding your own comments to a thread to keep the conversation going. The Control Center is your connection to add properties to sell, start new discussions, connect with local investors, and even find private funding. The Notifications tab will keep you alerted to new investment properties and offers. You'll also find new friend requests to connect directly with the community to build your network. From the property marketplace, you'll be able to find, favorite, and make offers on investment properties. Download Connected Investors today to find, figure, fund, and flip investment properties on the go.